how it happened, we really wanted to eat conchas at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we couldn't find a place that was in our area. That led to let's open all day, and that led to let's open at night. And I don't know if we're pioneers, but we're definitely really happy.
You're listening to the Taste Podcast. I'm Editor-in-Chief Matt Rodbard, here with Senior Editor Anna Hezel.
On today's show, we have Daniela Soto-Innes, the chef at Cosme and Atla in New York City. Also, later on the program, we'll be talking to photographer and cookbook author Michael Harlan Turkel. But Matt, how was talking to Daniela?
Daniela's story is really cool and unique. She was born in Mexico City and raised in Houston, Texas. So she has this Mexican and American point of view, which has really informed the way she thinks about food. So we talk a lot about that.
And now she's living in New York, one of the cities that has the worst reputation for Mexican food in the country. It's
unbelievable, Anna, that people say almost on a daily basis, there's no good Mexican food in New York. On the contrary, it's actually the best city in America outside of maybe LA and some of the border towns in Texas for Mexican food, because on top of Queens and having great taquerias, we have some really adventurous cooking going on, and Daniela is one of the chefs leading the way.
Yeah, what I love about Cosme and Atla is that both of them seem to have a New York perspective.
It's so true. I think Atla is a cool restaurant with a very a changing menu. It's like an all-day cafe, but with a clear Latin and Mexican spin, and I think it's really enjoyable.
Here's Matt talking to Daniela.
Daniela Soto-Innes, thank you for joining the Taste Podcast. It's really cool to have you.
I'm happy to be here. I'm so excited.
Okay, so your partner Enrique Olvera has spoken about a Mexican momentum in New York, led by Julian Medina, Alex Stupak, Roberto Santabaez, TJ Steele at Claro. With all this said, I continually hear people tell me, smart people, that there isn't good Mexican food in New York, and it drives me crazy.
Do they tell you that now?
They tell me that now. They tell me this crazy shit.
Well, I think it's their opinion. I think real Mexican food depends on where you are. Of course, Mexican food changes where you are. If you're in Oaxaca, it's totally different from Mexico City, from Guadalajara. There is not going to be Oaxacan food in the United States. That cannot possibly be authentic. So we are authentic to ourselves using what we have within our environment, right? So if we have the most amazing sea buckthorn, or we have, the most beautiful striped bass, why would we go to Mexico and grab the fresh produce that is not going to be perfectly ripe in the United States? So I think that, to me, people that are really trying to use the dry ingredients from Mexico that are perfectly fine, like dry chiles, beans, corn, right? That is travels absolutely okay because it's supposed to be dry, and then utilizes everything that is around us. That's real Mexican food. So I think the perspective of people saying it's not real Mexican food, they're not.
Their lens is so narrow.
No, they just don't understand Mexican food.
But I do think my lead up for this was saying that it is actually really amazing in New York. Claro is one of my favorite spots. So
yeah.
Alex in Midtown, his restaurant.
Ochomoco just opened.
Ochomoco is amazing.
And my best friend is my best friend's husband, and he is so good. He was Stupak's chef de cuisine, and he is so talented and really loves Mexican food and uses everything he has around him. No, and I think just if we keep on thinking, medicine, no, is not like it's supposed to be. No, it's actually better. So if the doctors were the same as they used to be before, we will all be dead, right? Or maybe not. So why will we be cooking the same food from another state that we're not even in. So I think like people that are think like that are just dying alive, you know, like just like, I don't know, man, like you can judge all you want, but we're trying.
Dying alive, many New Yorkers in terms of Mexican food. I agree.
It's true. It's like, you know, like just like instead of like judging what like real is, like really actually get to know the person cooking and get to know the idea behind like we care so much, and we care about like just like supporting the local farmers, right? Like tomatillos that grow in upstate or Long Island or anywhere around us. They're delicious. They have a different flavor from Mexico, but they have a little bit sweetness that you should play around with, because if you want to make authentic Mexican food, you use what you have around you.
We throw that word around.
Right.
It's not really
yeah.
So in September 2014, I was writing a profile of Enrique. I'd never met you, and he was showing me the kitchen at Cosme this is right before you opened, and I walked down and you're using you're manipulating masa, and I look around the kitchen and I see a lot of women in the kitchen, and I'm struck by this point, and I say to him, "This is amazing," and he points to you and your team. I just want to ask you, like looking back 4 years ago, I think this was it should have been written about more about how you had so many women in the kitchen. Was this intentional? Or was it just the way it worked out?
It's just the way it worked out. Just we hire nice people, and if like nice people are both men and women, so whoever wants to work and learn, we hire them.
Has that fact, that like kind of that breakdown in that kitchen at Cosme, did you feel you were pioneering in a sense in New York kitchens?
If you go to Mexico, every single mayora, which is called the older person in the kitchen, is a woman, right? So why is it different, right? So for me, it was more like natural. It was more like family, and it's still like 4 years later, it's still like that. And I'm so happy because it's not a kitchen that I don't feel like I'm not myself. It's a kitchen that, like, if you're not okay, the woman will make you a tea, and they talk about how they used to grow all these vegetables and corn, and they have such like incredible knowledge about all of these that to me, I kind of like forgot what it's like not to work like that.
Mm-hmm. And really, and that point kind of about the gender balance and the breakdown, it really dissolved after I had my meal, and I was just like, this is just an outstanding restaurant. So just to be clear, I wasn't judging the restaurant.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are surprised, definitely, right? Because it's not expected. It's not normal so much in the US or like around the world. But for us, it's more of like, if you can cook, you can cook,
yeah.
You know?
But the paradigm is really a boy's world in the kitchen.
And the boys that we have are incredible. They're like gentlemen. If we can't carry something that is too heavy, we won't carry it. We have like strong men that can help us, you know? Like, I think we understand how to use our strength, and other people have other abilities, and it's okay. That's why a team works.
Yep. You grew up in Mexico City,
Yes.
but then you moved to Houston at an early age, and I just wanted to hear about what the food was like in both of those cities, and how they were different. I'm sure they are considerably different food cultures.
Absolutely. I remember in Mexico City, like, just before I even went to school in pre-K, when I was like 3, I would like cover my nose to not like smell the tacos or the quesadillas. And my mom would be like, "Stop it, Daniela. You're not going to get quesadillas at 7 a.m. And I would cry. I'm like, but I love food so much. And then after, like, everything was around food in my family. And when we moved to Texas, it was very different. It was welcome to Tex-Mex, which we were not used to.
Did you like it?
Yeah, actually. Like,
Actually.
there's like
in reflection.
things, like, I'm going to tell you, like, there's nothing wrong with a good burrito. Like, you know, like an amazing flour tortilla that is warm and melted cheese. Like, come on, who's not going to like it? Queso. Yes, of course. And, but it was different. It was not what I was used to while growing up. But then I was exposed to Cajun cooking and just like the Southern hospitality and how amazing like and caring the chefs were. And I really loved to learn, like I was in New Orleans also learning how to make jambalaya, gumbo, and all of that is completely different from what I learned. Like, we don't eat turtles or like alligator, no, in Mexico. So just getting to know those flavors for me was like so exciting. And yep.
Let's talk about Ninfas and navigation. Did you grow up going to that place in Houston? Ninfas?
No, I did not go there. No. But I passed by there many times.
Not a vegan tourist. I only asked because I had a pretty incredible experience there a few times.
I heard the fajitas are like really good there.
The fajitas are the jam.
And they have creamy avocado or something.
Yeah, dude, the fajitas are pretty much the jam with chorizo. I think it's like one of my favorite.
I think fajitas and chorizo are so good.
I
like if you put nopales in it.
Oh, there were nopales, and they have a side of queso, fondito.
Or like chicharrones, and just, oh my God, it's so good.
I love it.
We're like, I'm hungry now.
I know, I'm so hungry right now. We wrote a story on Taste about Mexico's new president, Enrique Peña Nieto. I think I butchered that name. I'm sorry. Where he visited Mexico's 2,464 municipal districts and sampled the regional food in all of them. I wonder, and this gesture, I guess, led to his election, or at least some people say that his connection to food. I mean, what does it say about Mexican culture and the connection to food that food played a role in the president becoming elected?
Well, I wouldn't comment about the president, but I do think that food has a power of just convincing people to fall in love with Mexico, right? I mean, when we opened the restaurant, we had maybe like 20 employees. Now we have like, with both restaurants, like 200. And maybe 50% out of those people have been to Mexico City and to just go around and taste, and they're so excited. And now the new thing is mezcal. Now in their lives, they won't drink anything else other than mezcal, and they're completely convinced that they want to keep working with us and they want to, continue going to Mexico, and it's an obsession. So maybe that led to the president being elected. I don't know. But, I mean, food plays a big role in Mexicans' lives.
I think just thinking about 2,464 municipal districts and having different food ways.
Yeah, it's like every time I go to Mexico, I don't want to come back, but I want to come back to show everything that I learned. And it's just so good. So good.
I mean, for our listeners, I want to just dwell on this point about the regionality of the cuisine in Mexico. Unlike Italy, and we just don't say it enough, that Mexican foodways are so diverse in that way, and terroir plays such a role. I mean, is there a region of Mexico that, I'm just going to say, that you want to visit and learn about? Because I'm sure you haven't been to all the municipalities.
I mean, I want to go more to Chiapas. Every time I go to Mexico, I kind of like, my heart just goes directly to Oaxaca and Mexico City and Puebla and and this and that and Ensenada. But definitely Chiapas is something that I want to explore a little bit more. And people don't talk enough about Veracruz, the best vanilla ever. And it's so, Veracruz is an incredible place. Actually, the chef de cuisine from Pujol is from Veracruz, which is a friend of mine since Texas.
And that's a border region, right? Veracruz,
yeah,
right?
Veracruz is so cool.
And I think the border regions oftentimes get dragged in the narrative of cartel warfare, and which is really shocking and troubling. But a lot of folks don't look at the foodways and the culture there. It's just a lot of this kind of misdirection in terms of the energies. But the food there is pretty incredible.
So delicious. And it's pretty hot there. It's a good vacation place. Not on August, too many mosquitoes.
Oh, is it just so maybe not go there during mosquito season?
No, don't go. I mean, if you're sweet like me, you can. I'm just kidding. You can't go there during August.
Give me one more region. I just want to dive into it that we should think about with Mexico.
I think like people should like visit Ensenada more. Ensenada, great wine, incredible seafood.
Amazing. I've been
it's there. So good. It's so good, and just Tijuana is really fun. I mean, it's really close to San Diego, so maybe.
But you're going to get a totally different experience than
food.
Mexico City in
Absolutely.
Tijuana.
I think the cool thing about Mexico City is like everybody goes there to bring their food, right? It's kind of like, I feel sometimes like New York or LA, like people from different places go to New York and they express themselves. Same thing in Mexico City. You will find everything. Even like incredible sushi, which is weird, right? But like
becoming less weird, actually.
Yeah, right. Becoming less weird. And the bar scene is incredible in Mexico City. A friend of mine opened like a bunch of Ensenada restaurants there. And yeah, you find everything.
So Ensenada style in Mexico City, so it's quite a
Ensenada
distance.
style.
So you're seeing that. You see that in New York, of course, where we have regional American cuisine being presented in New York, like southern restaurants. So in Mexico City, you're seeing the foodways of the regions of Mexico presented in restaurant form.
Right. Yeah, which is awesome. And los mercados, the markets, are so good. Like, they're just getting better and better.
Let's talk about Atla, your restaurant downtown.
Yeah.
And it's such a modern concept when you opened, and you've been open for a little while now. It's like Mexican and Latin American flavors. It's an all-day cafe. Did you feel like you were pioneering when you opened that a few years ago?
Pioneering? Starting a trend.
Yeah.
Well, how it happened, we really wanted to eat conchas at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we couldn't find a place that was in our area. So, and we wanted tlacoyos. We were like, we need to open a breakfast place and a coffee shop, and that led to like, let's open all day, and that led to let's open at night. And I mean, I don't know if we're pioneers, but we're definitely really happy with what we accomplished. People there we have regulars that come in every day. Sean, the owner at Lilia, is there almost every day, and I'm so happy to see him. A lot of industry people, they're just there to, and they look so happy. We try to change the menu often with the seasons as well. And it's just like a perfect size restaurant.
We're recording this in late summer. What are some of the menu items that you have on there? I'm just curious, because it is changing all the time. When I've been a few times, I haven't come back and had the same thing.
We're going to do this Tuesday. We're doing 8 vegan dishes, which is... there are so many veggies in the market. So like we have paletas of raspberry and strawberry. Then we have this raspberry tomato sorbet with mezcal, Palo Santo smoked white bean tlayuda with chichitos. And what else? We have this cacao tamal with cacao butter and cashew sorbet. Then we have the cauliflower al pastor taco.
Oh, yeah, that sounds great.
Oh, my God, that's so good.
I love that. That's a challenge to kind of call it pastor with a non-meat product.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a challenge, but if you put the work on it, like it's delicious, and it has the grilled pineapple. Then we have this coconut yogurt with golden berries and amaranth.
Sounds amazing.
I keep on thinking about things. I kind of forgot everything that we have going on.
And you mentioned Palo Santo, and I was checking out your Instagram stories, and you were doing a Palo Santo water pour over with a tea that made me really intrigued.
Shisandra berries.
Tell me about that, because you're using Palo Santo water. You're steeping, putting Palo Santo into water for a medicinal purpose, right?
Right. So growing up, I always used to burn Palo Santo because my father, always incense, Palo Santo, reggae, and all of these, and always have Palo Santo around my house. I burn it in the kitchen, and we were in Japan, and everyone knows I love Palo Santo. And we were in Japan, and I see our beverage director burning Palo Santo in the hotel in the Mandarin Oriental. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm prepping for a new cocktail. And I'm like, we're in Japan in a hotel. Yeah, but I like this view. And she starts grabbing containers out of her suitcase and just burns the Palo Santo, puts water in it. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're turning it off. It's like, just watch. A day later, I tried the most delicious water. And I've been doing it ever since. Like, I use it as a creamer on my coffee because it's so nice and creamy. And then these schisandra berries, like, it just gives you a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to stay away from coffee, so I'm doing, like, green coffee sometimes because I have like way too much energy. Even
You're
if I
grinding
work out.
green coffee?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So not in the schisandra, but then a little bit of CBD and I'm good to go.
I saw that. So you're including CBD, which is dope, and some
My
Palo
sister
Santo
lives
water.
in Colorado, so
sends
like
you the oil.
she like sends me the oil. I'm all set.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
really. I was just intrigued by using a pour over, using a Chemex, but using
It's good.
different berries.
It's good, and I'm like exploring with those like different berries, like because I know that it's so good for you, and people put it in like there's smoothies and there's smoothie bowls, but like why not making it actually good? Like with like maybe we put it in the ceviche or in a mole. So I'm trying to learn more about that, so it won't be only a smoothie.
Totally. So Cosme, are you planning a Los Angeles location? I read some article. It was a while ago. Is it still happening?
Yes, we're working on that. Timing is still a little bit unknown. We're super excited. It's going to be a combination between Cosme and Atla. Everything changes once you're in the place, but we're
You have
super
a lease then? You have a location?
excited. Yes.
Where's
it's
it
a
at?
secret.
Of course
Downtown.
it is. West Side? It's downtown.
Yeah.
There you go. Downtown's different than West Side.
But
so.
we have our chef already, Chuy. He used to be my sous chef when we first started. And then he was there for like a year or so. Then he went back to Texas. He's from Austin. Well, no, he's not from Austin. He's from Texas, but he lived in Austin. And he's a great guy. And now he's training in Cosme again to get ready for
it's an exciting
the
opening. Downtown is
it's
really
gonna
popping.
be. So, I got goosies. Yeah, it's going to be super fun. Chuy is already kind of eyeing some of our cooks, and I'm like, just step away. Don't do it. But I'm also like, hey, you want to go to LA? You want to go?
I mean, it's not a bad
Yeah,
offer.
it's not a bad offer. Yeah.
So we ask all of our guests on the podcast this question. So if you had your dream cookbook project to work on, what would that be?
My dream cookbook project. Traveling around Mexico and the U.S. and comparing how to use this amazing product in each region in the U.S. I think that's a exciting thing because I think a lot of chefs, we try to do that, like an idea that we see when we travel and then kind of like landing it in our kitchen. And I think it will be interesting, but I'm not ready for it anytime soon right now.
Pressure.
No pressure,
Not saying
everyone.
that. Never pressure. But I think that's a really cool idea is the travel of Mexico, but also coming from your point of view, which is really creative. You have so much creativity. I want to see this book happen.
Maybe one day. When we open it later. Maybe. We always have new ideas. Every day we get new ideas and we get really excited in it. And then sometimes it's like so easy to say yes. And then it's like, oh man, yeah, I have to do this now.
Yeah. Daniela Soto-Innes, thank you for joining the Taste Podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Here's Michael Harlan Turkel talking to Matt at Books Are Magic in Brooklyn.
Dude, Michael Harlan Turkel, I think this book, it surprised me in so many ways. First off, there aren't as many photos as I thought there would be. And that's a credit to you because your words, I think, really make this a real thing. I mean, photos are, of course, your background. Everyone who's friends with you knows your work. So many cookbooks. But, man, you are a reporter. Like Michael Harlan Turkel, like I think like you've got this this combination of skills that is so rare. You've got aesthetics. Your show at Heritage is about aesthetics. You of course are a photographer, but you there's a little moment in the book where you're describing the type of wood at the sushi bar in Ginza, and I'm like, wow, man, you totally wrote that down in like a notebook.
Oh yeah, and I
right?
Yeah, it's
like
true.
you like you're not like the photographer dude who's in the vinegar. Like you're
Yeah.
a fucking journalist, man.
Yeah, and I couldn't read my writing afterwards
Okay.
either. So thankfully, I have that photographic memory to remind myself of all that.
But I mean, this book it is just a riot to read. Like to read with your really unique voice, and this journey that you take. You actually the trip is really a trip. It's not some marketing jargon. So I want to find out, like, first, I want to hear, like, a little bit about getting into vinegar and how that, like, evolved and into your retail. And then also just about vinegar in general for home cooking. I think there's a lot to be said. So let's first just find out a little bit about the background, about your experiments in the backyard. You write about this in the introduction. I think it's really curious. Explain how you, like, kind of got hooked on vinegar.
Well, it was even before I started experimenting with making vinegar. I've always had an acidic palate. And I worked in restaurants for about a decade. And by working in restaurants, I worked at Greasy Spoons, and I worked in some really nice places as well. But I was a photographer that somehow figured out the ruse of, can I come and photograph in your kitchen? And then I got to be in the best kitchens in Boston and New York and now around the world as a journalist. But I was still a college kid at that point, and I didn't think of it as anything seriously. I just knew I was cataloging something and that would end up somewhere at some time. And I think I was 20, and Barbara Lynch from Number 9 Park gave me a cap full of vinegar. I didn't even know it was vinegar at the point.
Oh, really?
Gave me a cap full of something and said,
sweet and acidic.
she's like, taste this. This is the best shit you're ever going to have. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I took it and I couldn't speak. And she gave me the quarter bottle left and said, here, enjoy it. Don't fuck it up. And I'm like, okay. So, and 15 years later, I found myself in Vienna meeting the vinegar maker that made that
that's a
liquid. So it was literally 15 years of this kind of taste memory that was stuck in my head, and I didn't know what to do with it. And the same thing about photographing in restaurants. I did this series called The Back of the House, which I started in college, extended itself to Edible and a lot of other magazines. And I kind of just stockpiled for the sake of stockpiling. And I think that's what happened. And this is the impetus. That was the impetus, and this is kind of the end result of all that, cataloging.
I think like vinegar is the vehicle to catalog like the last 15 years of your very unique life, right?
Yeah.
So why vinegar? Why is vinegar this common ingredient, this concept that chefs and makers and people in the food world want to talk to you about? Like, this book isn't about olive oil. It's not about salt. It's about vinegar. Why vinegar?
Well, there are not many chefs in this country that make vinegar in-house, and I found that really, really surprising. Not to say I found this weird little niche and kind of exploited the fact that, I can be the one. I can be the academic. I'm just like, well, that's really weird. Yeah. Like, I need to solve that for myself before solving it for everybody else. And then I was digging around trying to find literature about vinegar, and I couldn't find any. I really, really couldn't find any. So the only way I know how to learn is by tangibly going someplace and seeing it and tasting it and making it. The only way I was going to do this book is if I could travel and meet these makers.
But you also made it in your backyard. So let's talk about that. Let's
Yeah.
go back to that, like making vinegar.
Yeah.
I love the anecdote about going to Smith and Vine and getting like old bottles of wine and experimenting. Like, tell that story about how you kind of got into it through this local wine shop.
Yeah. Well, I got into it accidentally, I think, the same way that most people think vinegar is made. It's wine that's gone sour or gone bad, but really it's anything, and I'm going to get a little scientific and dorky and stop me if I go too far down the wormhole. Vinegar is alcohol that turns into acetic acid, but even before that, alcohol is sugar, and before sugar, it is starch. So anything that can go along that flow chart from starch to sugar to alcohol can inevitably be acetic acid someday. So the first time I made it, I did not know I was going to make vinegar. I had a party at my house every Saturday. The Saturday after Thanksgiving, I usually have a pizza party at my house. A whole bunch of people come over. We get a keg from Six Point, and we didn't kick it that time. I don't know. We weren't as vibrant drinkers as we used to be. So I filled up a barrel that we had because I thought I wanted to make like a barrel-aged cocktail. I don't know. I stockpile things. I'm not a hoarder. I'm a stockpiler.
You're on the cusp of hoarding.
There is intention. So I had this barrel in the backyard, and I'm like, I'm not really going to do this cocktail thing. Let me just fill it up with beer. And I forgot about it. It wintered over.
Started to snow.
And during the spring, I opened that thing up, and it was the best malt vinegar I've ever smelled and tasted in my life. And
Explain it. What was some of the characteristics of that first batch?
Well, when you has anyone huffed vinegar? Not like glue, but has anyone? It's intoxicating in the way that it can knock you out.
Yeah.
It's almost caustic. This had this smoothness. Like the difference between White Dog and really great whiskey. Yeah. Like it was round. It had caramel notes. It actually had aroma and nuance, and like it blew my mind because I didn't know what the hell it was, and I needed to find out more.
Let's talk about some of the characters in the book, because there's lots of characters. You get to meet you get to hear about Massimo Bottura. Like you got to hang out with him and talk about vinegar.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty
kind of
cool.
wild.
What was that like?
Well, I planned a 2-week trip around Europe based on a 1-hour meeting with him. But I knew I wanted to go and meet him because balsamic is the vinegar that I think most of us know or think we know well. And it's usually our first introduction into that kind of gourmand pantry item. And it is so misunderstood. And it is a bastardization of what it used to be. Up until the 1970s, it really wasn't exported outside of 2 towns in Emilia-Romagna in Italy. So I had to go to the heart to figure out why most people think vinegar, or when you say vinegar, they say, oh, balsamic, because I actually believe it's such an outlier. Most other vinegars are made of juice or wine, of something that is raw, and balsamic's cooked. So it's must reduce down a certain percentage and then fermented. So in my head, balsamic's more of a method than it actually is, a style.
I was so disheartened when I read that, you made this comment, and it's very shrewd. It's everyone has had fake balsamic.
Oh, yeah.
Which bummed me out. And I'm thinking at the salad bar where you're putting that black liquid, that's not balsamic, right? That's something with a lot of food coloring in it, right?
Lots of food coloring.
Which bummed me out, man.
Yeah.
Talk about the difference between the stuff you're going to get outside Modena and what's not the Whole Food salad bar.
Well, once you have Traditionale, the DOP stuff from Modena, it's going to ruin you. So if you want to go have it, go have it, but you're not going to be able to turn back, because you can't go to the supermarket after that and have shitty balsamic, which is nothing more than ethyl alcohol, truly corn-based ethanol, then flavored and colored to taste and texturally feel like our concept of balsamic. I can't say enough bad things about it.
Let's shift to Japan. I think that is probably the heart of this book. I think it's obviously, if anyone knows you, you have a deep interest in Japanese culture. It's Sayushu Yoshibori?
Oh, Uchiburi-san.
Uchiburi-san, sorry.
Yeah.
So he created this kind of culture of drinking vinegars in Japan. This one individual. And drinking vinegars are common in Japan. They're sold in the subway stations.
Well, it's interesting you say Japan's the heart of this book, because it was actually the part of my travels which I was expecting one thing and I found the other. I was expecting Japan, I know it to have a culture of these shokunin, these artisans, these people that make a singular thing so well for generations upon generations, that it's going to be easy to find vinegar makers, and it was actually really hard. The majority of vinegar in that country, as well as the U.S., are these large conglomerates. But I heard about this guy Uchiburi, who calls himself a sommelier. Okay. And su, S-U, is vinegar in Japanese. He wears this little bow tie. He rolls around this little hard case suitcase filled with vinegar. And not like a salesman. He just can't live without it. When he goes to restaurants, he eats the food and he goes, and takes the vinegar out, puts it on top, and said, much better. But this drinking vinegar thing it's more Taiwanese and Korean than it is Japanese, and he's kind of imported this idea and played to the palate of Japanese culture today, which is much sweeter than it ever used to be. The majority of flavor pre-sushi as we know it, edome, like raw sushi on rice, was kind of tart and acidic. It was vinegar based. So sushi before that, hako sushi, was vinegared rice and vinegared fish.
So explain what a drinking vinegar is like in Japan, and how are you consuming it? You have a moment in the book where you talk about people lining up in the morning to drink vinegar, which is great. And I wish we had that here because I would totally be into that.
It's another, oh man, Uchiburi's good at puns. It was called an espresso bar, SU being vinegar again. But in Tokyo Station, you can go up and get a shot of vinegar like you're going to have an espresso in the morning. And I had been told to go and check it out, and they're like, get there early, there's quite a line. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, no way there's that big a line for these vinegar shots. And it was 100 people deep.
Wow.
And it was like, but it was so well understood, the role of that place. And I think of it like church. I'm a Brooklyn Jew, sorry.
Yeah.
But I think of it like church, going to get the body of Christ. But people kind of, I know, I'm sorry. I only understand church a little bit, and it's mainly the food aspects. So yeah,
the wafer.
I'm like, these crackers are delicious.
These wafers.
Yeah. But the way they lined up and actually took those shots of vinegar, it was religious.
So let's talk more. I think we should shift now to like actually cooking with vinegar, because I think it's challenging for many, and especially because myself, I'm like, my balsamic is like that bullshit balsamic. Like
It's good for things.
Okay, it's good for things. So first off, like, how are we buying vinegar as home cooks? Like, how, like, can you do that? Can you say that in 2 minutes? Like, how do you buy vinegar? Is that possible? I know it's like your book is about, but how do you buy vinegar? Like, what do you invest in?
You invest in good local regional things, kind of like, how we think about food in general. I also like the global market and those flavors. So I don't want to say only buy within this region, this territory, and disregard everything else, but vinegar exists kind of everywhere in the world. And we have a great orchard culture in New York State and a lot of, apple cider makers. So if you dig around a little, you'll find some of those people also make apple cider vinegar and get the live Acetobacter, raw, unpasteurized stuff, and it is gorgeous. Going to a supermarket, the majority of what you're going to find is pasteurized. Not that I do have a lot of things against it, but, I very much
do. In pasteurization in general?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it's not really common in most parts of the world.
Yeah, but, good vinegar, you can find it. You just have to go to the right shops, and it's not your supermarket. You're going to have to dig a little. I hope it proliferates. I hope we find vinegar at green markets. I hope we find, vinegar being sold at these apple orchards or, sold at breweries. That my biggest hope is great malt vinegar around the country. We have such a amazing craft beer boom happening. Why don't we have a craft beer vinegar thing? It's
every brewery should have their vinegar.
They throw away wort. They have spent grain. They could actually be making this and making it a secondary, and profitable business.
So how are Americans right now using vinegar through your travels and research? Like the American home cook. I'm not talking about chefs because I know you're talking, you talk to a lot of chefs, but like people in like everyday cooks, like how are they using it?
I think one of two ways. They either think they're buying the really nice balsamic, or they're buying the biggest bulk 5-liter bin of something that they hide underneath their sink and use for cleaning as well. I won't even talk to you too much about white distilled vinegar and how much I don't often use the word abhor, but white distilled vinegar, man, just stay away from it. For cleaning, yes, it's great for cleaning.
Can you assume if their vinegar is in a box that it's good?
Oh, I drink some boxed wine, so I can't really.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like when you take it out of a box, when you
oh no, packaging. Yeah, that's what screwed balsamic.
That's bullshit, right?
Yeah. No, the best vinegars I've ever had are you should see how I label my vinegars. It's like with duct tape and I scribble all over. But the best vinegars I've ever had are ones given to me by crazy vinegar makers.
Let's talk about vinegar and fond. Because you talk, there's a couple of recipes where it's like fond, which is like the meat, like the residue from grilling meat in a pan, and you deglaze with vinegar. Like that's a big part of cooking.
Oh yeah.
So how do I do? Like, tell us, how do you do that? Like, and what does that do for a dish when you add vinegar to like grilled meat.
Yeah, so fond
sauté.
are those little bits that stuck to the bottom of your pan after you grill. It comes off the Maillard effect, Maillard effect, which is, the caramelization of sugars. And I think it's better to explain it through a sauce that isn't a pan sauce, gastrique.
Okay.
So gastrique is everyone knows what shrubs are here? The drinking thing?
Drinking
yeah. So gastriques are kind of like the sauce version of shrubs. They're a little more reduced. They're usually poured over, from duck to other roasted and glazed meats. But it is sugar and some kind of fruit juice and vinegar reduced down into this like caramelly syrup. Well, fond's kind of the same thing, but just in little nuggets.
Yeah.
And so you're really just using vinegar to, one, release it from the pan, but also extend it out into a bigger sauce and unlock those flavors that were
so
kind
you
of
shouldn't just leave that in the pan.
No, that's gold.
That is gold.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing. Like, I read your book and you're speaking passionately about
Yeah, and
it.
I hate doing dishes. So the more you can lift off the pan
And
and
use
incorporate into cooking. Yeah.
Okay, we're doing like slightly speed round version here. Okay, so for a salad, when do you use lemon juice and when do you use vinegar?
I think there were a couple guys in this book. I think Massimo said some stuff.
He says a lot of stuff.
He
man.
says,
that
"Oh
guy,
man."
man.
Again, I only met him for an hour, and I felt like I lived a lifetime sitting down with him.
He is. He holds court. So lemon versus we'll go back to lemon juice versus vinegar for a salad recipe.
He was one, and then there were a couple other that talk about, vinaigrettes. You don't necessarily need oil to dress a salad. Oil is a fat. Sometimes it makes the roughage a little heavy and laden. So vinegar is a flavor. Lemon is a flavor, and it just depends on what your salad is comprised of.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
man.
So
give us.
Yeah,
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's totally it's your palate. It's preferential. So I can't say. I mean, I'll admit it now. I use lemon. I do use lemon at home, not for all my salads, but there are times that I reach for that over vinegar. For bitter greens, I kind of like lemon. It's a little sharper and more abrasive.
Yes,
yeah.
I agree.
And then then you say, when do I use vinegar? And there's so many vinegars out there that's the harder question for me to answer, because now I can be like, well, I'll use this vinegar for that, this vinegar for that, but lemon's almost a little more ubiquitous to me right now. Like, it's easy for me to grab that and put it on without thinking about what I'm actually having it with. And now vinegar, I'm like, wait, no, that vinegar doesn't make sense for this anymore, because I know this story and I met this guy and I had this dish. So I've actually cuckolded myself with dealing with vinegars.
In the back of the book, and I think the back is really, really cool. Like, you don't really have vinegar recipes, but you have these flavor profiles. So before that, though, there's a big process. There's like maybe 10 pages. Mm-hmm. How do I go home and use it and actually make vinegar? How do I use the book? Do I go to that last section and see the process and then go with these? And these flavor profiles, you have a Manischewitz wine vinegar, which is pretty awesome. There's an apple pie vinegar. There's a red eye vinegar, which is uses instant coffee, right?
Yeah.
Red eye mayo, gravy. So how do we use your book?
Yeah, that last section, I think it's going to be the least read and least utilized part of the book. I joke. I really want people to read that and study it and experiment and try, because, I'm lucky enough to have learned from a lot of great vinegar makers now, but I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure this out. That I wrote that it's one recipe about vinegar, and it's kind of written like a theoretical math. There's a lot of permutations, there's a lot of variables and controls, but it's mainly about just getting a handle on how to kind of steer vinegar in the right direction, and then hopefully you get there. So when it's going awry, and when it's going great. You need these indicators, and it is. So read that last section last, because I feel like you have to be slightly charmed by the stories and the flavors before getting to the really kind of heady and more empirical data-laden stuff.
But it's worth it, though, to make your own vinegar.
Oh, absolutely.
And
it's not hard.
It's not hard.
Even though that's 10, 12 pages of text about how to make one vinegar.
You don't need a lot of space.
No, not at all.
Not necessarily. You can put it, you can put it outside. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the refrigerator.
No, not at all.
And you can give it as a gift. You can there's cool applications for it.
So you know why I started making vinegar?
Huh.
I wanted to get back into the food space after cooking for a whole bunch of years. I want to make a food product. What's the laziest thing I can do? And I actually had a couple other ideas and iterations before vinegar, but when I arrived at that, I'm like, I'll just ferment something and it will go and it will eventually turn into vinegar. And, if I try to make wine and I do it poorly, it will eventually turn into vinegar. If I try to make beer and that doesn't go well.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's a great end goal because it's almost an inevitability. I learned that wasn't true, but it actually wasn't that hard. It just was a matter of time and patience and a little bit of nurturing and education.
I'm going to close by asking you about sumo wrestling because you are really the country's biggest non-Japanese fan of sumo wrestling and supporter.
No, we have a couple that come to Sumo Stew that far, exceed.
But you're in the top tier.
Okay.
Top 3.
Yeah,
in the
Megashira.
country.
Yeah, Yokozuna.
So explain what Sumo Stew is. You throw these amazing events. I got to go to one about 6 months ago. And you do it at Brooklyn Brewery, and it's a really fun night, and the food is amazing. There's great vinegar there and great booze there, lots of great whiskeys. But first off, what is Sumo Stew? And second off, what is your fascination with sumo wrestling? It's very unique and cool.
Yeah. It's another funny one. I love sports. I'm a huge Red Sox fan. I apologize, standing in New York. Yeah, I knew I was going to get... And I was looking right at you, Matt. I knew. I went to Japan for my honeymoon, and I luckily got to go see sumo wrestling. It was the best live sporting event I've ever seen. And I had no idea what was going on. I knew that at one point, the two titans would smash up against each other and one would fall down or be knocked out of a ring. I knew that, but that's all I knew. So we just Wikipedia'd sumo and then started reading and that's interesting. They live in a fraternity together. They take care of each other. It's such a great culture of people looking out for each other and feeding and nurturing to the point that there's chankonabe, which is the sumo stew that sumo wrestlers make for each other and eat with each other. But there's this crazy hierarchy. The top tier sumo wrestlers get to eat first. And this giant nabe, single pot of stew, all the good stuff rises to the top, and the best sumo wrestlers get to eat that. Then the next, and the next, and the lowest ranked guys, who are usually the ones who make the chankonabe, have a little broth and some extra rice.
They make it for the fraternity.
Usually, if there isn't... Now, a lot of these bayas or stables have dedicated chankonabe makers, and they travel with them. And so coming back to the U.S., I'm like, I got to figure out how to watch more sumo and figure out a way to stream it. Had to stay up kind of late because I could only do it live at first. Have now hacked the system that we're able to have these parties and project live sumo wrestling 6 times a year from the grand tournaments of Japan. And we make chankonabe, or an iteration, our version of what chankonabe is.
It's delicious too. It's. I think when I was growing up, I always assumed it was a very bland stew. I think that's what's written about it, but it was really good when I had it.
Well, there's no real recipe to it either.
I guess it's a thing.
It's seasonal. It's regional. It's actually whatever's given to the beya or the sumo wrestlers, whatever town they're in. The kind of citizens, the publicans there, drop off food as an offering and thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So, and they just throw it all in a pot, boil it up, and eat it. 3 or 4 servings, drink a beer, take a nap, then they go wrestle.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
That.
Yeah.
The Taste Podcast is hosted by Matt Rodbard and me, Anna Heasel. The show is produced by Gabrielle Lewis, studio recordings by Pat Stango, theme music by Steve Rydell. Interviews are recorded live at Books Are Magic in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, and at Penguin Random House Studios in Manhattan. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com. Thanks for listening.